Hey everyone, it's Mikki here. You're listening to Mikkipedia. This week on the podcast, on the 5th anniversary, would you even believe, I speak to returning guest and the person I had for the very first episode of Mikkipedia, Professor Grant Schofield. As you guys know, Grant and I are great mates and colleagues, and in this conversation, we talk about the value of doing hard things, particularly in a time where almost everything is comfortable and easy. So this is on the back of Grant's soon-to-be-released book on the topic, and we discuss what doing hard things means, what both of us do in our lives that is in line with this, and how we integrate the principle on a day-to-day basis. But we also sort of step back and talk about it more globally as to what it means for you and potentially those around you in order to optimize health. So for those of you unfamiliar with Grant, he's been on the podcast several times. I will put links to those podcasts in the show notes as well. Grant is a professor of public health at Auckland University of Technology. He is a former director of the university's Human Potential Centre, former chief scientific advisor to the Ministry of Education in New Zealand. He is the co-author of 4 best-selling books, and he's recently stepped into his full-time role as Chief Science Officer for PREKURE. Professor Grant's career has focused on preventing the diseases of modern times and seeing what it takes to help people live a long, healthy and happy life. He lives and breathes the motto, be the best you can be, and sees this as a game changer for the health system, capable of transforming the current health sickness model to one in which we aspire to be well. He is redefining public health as a science of human potential, the study of what it takes to have a great life. Grant is well known for thinking outside the box and challenging conventional wisdom in nutrition and weight loss, as well as physical activity and exercise. Grant brings his fluency across several scientific disciplines, from human physiology to psychology to peak performance, to his role at PREKURE, where he delivers world-class training in lifestyle medicine and particularly health coaching. So I've got links as to where you can find Grant, where you can find his What the Fat books, and where you can find more information on PREKURE. And as I mentioned, previous episodes which Grant has been a guest on. Before we crack on into the episode though, I would like to remind you that the best way to support this podcast is to hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast listening platform. This increases the visibility of Mikkipedia in amongst literally thousands of other podcasts out there, so more people get the opportunity to hear from guests that I have on the show, like Grant Schofield. All right team, enjoy the conversation. Nice. Oh my God, that is hilarious. You just went all awkward. Hey Grant, how are you?
Good. Well, is this the actual 500th version of the Mikkipedia podcast?
This is, so do you know, I had to double check my facts. It is not the 500th. It is 5 years, I think, of doing Mikkipedia podcast.
Oh, that's pretty cool. That's pretty robust.
Yeah.
Crack at it. And given today's talk is going to be about robustness, you've been very robust.
I have. And in fact, I think it's this is why I wanted you to be my interviewee, because you were the very first person who I interviewed on Mikkipedia all of those years ago when we were I'm pretty sure we were in some sort of lockdown, because I think our podcast was us having a rant about lockdown or something.
Oh, yeah.
And then you've been on maybe 2 or 3 times more, I think.
How many? I was the first. I was the only person you knew.
Yeah, no one else said yes, actually.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. Do you know, everyone used to say yes to podcast interviews. I didn't get almost anyone saying no until this academic who's very big on X in the sports nutrition space. I reached out to him and asked if he would be on the podcast, and he came back and said, I don't do anything without being paid these days. Isn't that crazy? An academic.
Most people were quite happy to be on there because the lottery of life, of course, is doing something you love. So then you're just going to do the stuff because it feels important to you and it's good fun. And if you haven't won that lottery and you're doing something you need to be paid, well, that's just your bad luck, really, because you didn't win the lottery of life. You struck out. So probably should feel sorry for the poor guy.
Well, I started off feeling a bit miffed from that, but then just thought it actually didn't matter, because there are so many amazing people who have said yes and continue to say yes, that, ended up being no big deal, but I thought it was an interesting response.
Yeah, it's a slight on there, missing the spin of the roulette wheel, really. They landed on red when everyone else got black.
That's a good way to put it. It's a good way. And Grant, over the years, we've had quite a few in-depth conversations, which I've always appreciated. And in fact, of course, because I used to work at AUT, then I left AUT, and we didn't have that same sort of weekly catch-up, probably a good thing. I mean, you would have just annoyed me anyway. So this is always a great opportunity to catch up. But we recently did in person, which was really fun.
Yeah, and so our best catch-up is that we go for a run together and we can't physically leave each other for an hour. Or in one case, when we got lost on that back bit of Brisbane, that was an hour 45.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I was I was fine. I was down for a longer run, and I was pleased that we hadn't mapped out an entire long run when we got lost, because that way you're sort of accumulating even more kilometres. But no, it was fun, and it took me back to the time when another time we're in Brisbane for a conference, going running at 4 o'clock in the morning, because it was so blooming warm. But really lucky, Grant, to have you as a really good friend and as a mentor, and you continue to put out awesome information, both obviously in that academic space, but of course you've since sort of just moved a bit into more of the, what is it? Is it just private education? I don't want to undersell it, actually.
Yeah, well, PREKURE trains health coaches, so prevention is cure, and then I think probably now we would say we've broadened that into just being experts in behaviour change in general, because my opinion, the holy grail of having a good life, in the first instance, is knowing how to change your own behaviour. But then if you're in our helping profession, knowing how to change other people's behaviour. And if you think about the skills needed for that, it's sort of the antithesis, the exact opposite of what the medical and health system does, which is just randomly hand out advice. They don't meet you where you're at. They're not doing it on your agenda. They're telling you to do stuff, and people don't, because there's some straight physiology. The amygdala, the midbrain lights up, fight or flight, minimise danger. Whereas if you tell me you're doing something, then the frontal lobe lights up and you're simulating the future and you can imagine great outcomes. So, the whole thing about health behaviour, both for yourself and for other people, and the relationships in your life, pretty much the exact opposite of what the medical system does. So that's what we're really become involved with, and that's what I'm doing mostly. I'm still supervising some PhD and master students and doing some research, but as for the day-to-day runnings of university bureaucracy, that's moving into being a distant memory, thank God. Not that I was any good to start with. I mean, I should say that strategic laziness, not actual laziness, but strategic laziness has always been a strength of mine. And this was long before one of the great books, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, came out. And it's a best-selling book, and the title's not really about not caring, but it's purposely deciding not to care about some things, which frees you up to do the stuff you want to do. And universities are full of things that can suck your time and return nothing but grief. So, I'm pleased to be not in that.
That's such a what you've just described about, even though you used the university context, that's just the context, life that a lot of people find themselves in, right? Having to give all of their energy and time to things which that they feel obliged to because they can't say no, or they just have this they don't put themselves first, essentially, I think, with a lot of my clients that I speak to. And actually learning how to do that and how to zoom out, I suppose, and look at the things which really matter and the things that don't, that's a real skill.
Yeah, and the sort of skill, actual behavioural skill for buying yourself some time, because we're all, especially the people, I'm lucky I don't have a people-pleasing personality, but for people like you that do, that you've got to buy yourself time, right, to figure out how you're going to say no, but nicely. And so that's a skill. But also, on top of that, the basic facts of the matter are, if you're going to have a good life, you're probably going to be saying no to actually things that you would love to do. But that's in the context of things that you would even more love to do. So, that's what you want to be choosing between, things that you really, really want to do and things that you sort of really want to do, not stuff that you don't want to do at all, but somehow you've got roped into.
So, Grant, I have like a list of questions and I really want to go through them with you, because a lot of this, because I imagine you cover this in your book as well that's coming out, but Choose Your Hard. So what is the name of your book that you're about to publish or you have published?
Yeah, Choose Your Hard. I'm just in the final. I had a full draft done, and then I gave it to the editors, which are the PREKURE CEO, but also my wife, Dr. Louise Schofield, and the PREKURE marketing lead, my son, 24, Sam Schofield. Both incredible writers and communicators, and they're like, well, that's shit. Good content, but you're not serious, are you? And so now we've gone through and done another 2 iterations, and it's looking amazing, basically, thanks to their help. But the book's Choose Your Hard, the art of getting shit done by doing hard stuff. And I mean, I just preface this by saying, let's get the embarrassing part out of the way, because I had a book called What the Fat, with various connotations, and Choose Your Hard, which I thought had no connotations until recently. My 84-year-old mother took me aside and said, Grant, I'm concerned about the nature of your book title. And I was like, what are you concerned about? And she's like, it's got a very sexual connotation.
I would never have ggone there with that book title.
No, but I'm sticking with it. But yeah, I was like, okay, Mum, thanks for that.
And that your mother came up with it is actually like quite hilarious.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no one wants to sort of think about their mothers in those terms.
No,
but I think what I've been thinking around with that is, some of the stuff we've done our whole life, you and I, Mikki, it's been, we've had the privilege of doing it for our career and our passion and what we do personally. That some obvious biology, and the technical name for that is hormesis. You do something that's in high doses will be toxic, but in low doses just damages you a bit. Your body readjusts and you're a better version of yourself, and exercise is the most obvious example of that, right? We know the 7 truths. So that the first truth is move or rust, which is, we know so much about that now, but I think it's just worth re-emphasising amongst all that still, half of Australians and New Zealanders are still, coming off the couch, sedentary or physically inactive. And if you wanted to choose, we hear all this stuff around, prostate screening, breast cancer screening, colorectal cancer screening, statins, GLP-1s, what do they actually do for your quality and quantity of life? Well, maybe some of them a little bit. But if you wanted to actually figure out the dose of something that would actually really have an effect on the quality and quantity of your life, it's being physically fit and physically strong. And we just need to keep shouting that from the rooftops. So, one great disappointment of my 30-year academic career is that on my watch we've got worse. Yeah, and I've been working at it quite hard, to be honest. So there's that's the first biological aspect of that. Food's obviously the holy grail of having a good life as well. But there's a hormetic aspect to that. The stress of eating is inflammatory, and that's a really good thing. Just like exercise is inflammatory, but equally not eating is anti-inflammatory, and that yin and yang is biologically hormetic, stress recovery, and that building up. And like anything, if you keep taking the food without the not food section, then you run into issues there. So started with that biological aspect, but I think what's grabbed my attention more than anything else, by a long shot, you get metabolically dysregulated by being inactive, sleeping poorly, eating poorly. But the brain biochemistry dysregulation, which I think is getting pretty well known now, around the reward system, is one of the great ironies of life. And one of the truths there is, pleasure causes pain, and pain causes pleasure. And if I just want to go back a step here, I think the most interesting thing to me, and this is true in every Western country, but I'll just tell you the New Zealand data because I know them so well. If you measure 16 to 24-year-olds in the National Health Survey, you measure their psychological distress. So this is not mental illness, but it's severe psychological distress, not coping in society at that moment. Then on our national surveys, these are robust measures, the K10 that's been used all around the world. In 2005, 5.6% of our young people at any one time had severe psychological distress. That's not awesome. And some statistic that girls are usually 50% higher than boys, and there's some reasons for that we'll come into. And it was going along quite steadily like that until about 2012, 2014, when in every Western country that just tilted upwards and rocketed away from us and is still going away from us. And so in the last National Health Survey, it was 25% of 16, 24-year-olds had severe psychological distress at any moment. Girls closer to 33%. And it's not discussed in society. So it's not mental illness, but it sort of does get diagnosed as depression and anxiety as well. But they're sometimes in physical pain, they're not coping. And the question is, there's a few hypotheses around what changed here. And I think it's a dysregulation of the pleasure or the reward pathways. And so, a common thing is, life's too stressful for you, reach out, get help. Sure, and that'll be a bunch of people, but I don't think that's what's explained what's happened. I think what's happened is, especially the advent of the, you have a look at your one now, actually, the device around that time, and then social media, that raises dopamine. Vaping, tobacco raises dopamine supernormally. Junk food or ultra-processed food raises dopamine supernormally. Gaming does, more for boys for girls, social media more for girls for boys, and so on and so on and so on. Porn. And so now you've got dopamine going way up. You need more and more of the same pleasurable stimulus to get the same hit, tolerance. And now the system down regulates. So baseline is not neutrality, it's the opposite of pleasure, it's pain. And perversely, you're in a situation that you started taking all these pleasurable things that initially gave you pleasure, and now you're in psychological pain. And that is a ridiculous situation for us to have ended up in as humans. But I think that's the most likely explanation for the rocketing change in poor youth mental health outcomes. And you think particularly for girls who do compare themselves with other girls of the same age, and you've got this Instagram, you're not comparing yourself with just the girls in your school now, you're comparing yourself with all of the girls in the world. Most of the ones you're seeing aren't even real.
Yeah. So Grant, when you mention it's, they're living in this pain or the psychological distress, and I'm just curious, is the distress come from the removal of these things to get back into everyday life? And I asked this question because I remember looking at a study, actually, maybe it was 2020 or 21, and they talked about the effects of, it wasn't social media, actually, it was gaming, the effects of gaming on the brain, and how when kids get fully immersed into that world, it's much more exciting than real world. And so when they're pulled from it, be it to go do their homework or to go to the dinner table or whatever, they have this level of anxiety and I'm not going to say depression, but this real shift in mood and lowering of mood. Is that where it comes from? Was it just the sort of living in the environment of, or do we not even know?
No, I think that's a great example. In fact, that's the opening story in one of my chapters is my 14-year-old son, Danny. He's our third son, so we really haven't been paying quite as much attention to them. So, don't judge me for this, but we lost some of our parenting mojo or attention, I suspect. But he was into his gaming quite a lot. And what we noticed was a few things happening. He stopped eating normal food, stopped enjoying exercising. He's a keen hockey player and doing so much of that. He was quite socially withdrawn. He would easily be dysregulated in get angry. I don't know if people have got teenage boys. I don't know if this has happened to you, Mikki, but you just hear them down in the room and then you hear them like banging, like on their thing, fuck. And it's just, so this beautiful young man had sort of disappeared from us. And, I'd been listening a lot to the Stanford psychiatrist Anna Lemke's work and read her book, Dopamine Nation, which I recommend. And she really talks about the idea of a dopamine fast, which is just, removal of those high dopamine raising things. So we just took the game away, which, it's a pretty brutal period because you go through a situation where, first of all, you're assholes and then you're effing assholes and, they're just basically losing their shit at you. And then when things come right in a couple of weeks, a normal, beautiful boy, wants to pet the dog again, eats normal food and gets some pleasure of exercising. Because, of course, those things didn't give any pleasure because they didn't, although they do raise dopamine, it's not raising it enough to even get out of pain. So what's the point? And so, it's very easy to blame these kids for being dysregulated, but it's just actually nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with that 1/3 of girls that are in psychological pain. It's just that they've got, the exact normal physiological and neurological response you'd expect from exposing yourself to exactly those things. So they're just getting normal. It's just normal physiology. And in many ways, it's surprising that it's only 1/3 of girls and 1/4 of boys. Like, I would expect, given, I don't know, like vaping, porn, alcohol, social media, gaming, junk food, the whole way they live their life is around those. I'm surprised only 1/3 go down the Googler. It's, that's the incredible thing to me, that the physiology is not worse.
100% agree. See, I think, Grant, with you in your situation, as you describe it with Danny, the great thing is that both you and Louise were on the same page. Danny just had one place with which he, he had there was one voice. You guys were united in that. And so he couldn't go anywhere else to get a different
opinion.
Exactly. Whereas for people who might be in split households where the children might go from one to another, they may get one message from one household and then in their other household let loose. That's a challenge. And I know, look, these are just the real life challenges of being a parent, I suppose.
You don't want to talk about that one a bit more?
Yeah. Well, sure. Shall I just go for it? No, but you know what I mean? Like, just the different messages that kids can get. And like, I guess there are a lot of kids in those situations, I suppose, and a lot of parents.
Yeah. I mean, one boy, Flynn, that I worked with for a while, who was 160 something kilos, but that was exactly that, but around food. They were just both a bitter sort of divorce relationship, and playing that poor boy off against each other and undermining each other. I mean, gosh, there's no winners there.
And so, Grant, with regards to obviously the dopamine, I'm just going back to your example, taking away the gaming, you're able to reestablish some sort of more normal baseline. Like, is that the only, I guess, I don't know if you know, are there other solutions? Is there any other solution?
Well, the other solution, of course, is that, what we're talking about is one half of the equation, which is pleasure eventually causes pain. But the whole system works completely in reverse, which is the advantage of cold, sauna, and or exercise, or preferably all three. So this is a really weird thing, right? I don't. No one likes cold water, do they? Like I don't sit there, even if you've been doing, we've got a chest freezer here, we freeze it up and you jump in it. No one looks at it and goes, this will be fun.
Good point. Because you know what, in my head I'm like, I do, but I don't love it. What I love is the feeling afterwards.
Yeah, correct, because it's the exact opposite thing. So now you're putting discomfort first.
Yes.
And so the reward system works almost completely the opposite way around. Then you take the discomfort away. Now you've got pleasure, but it's a different way of stimulating pleasure, and it lasts so long, and it doesn't raise dopamine supranormally. So you don't get the addiction side of things, but you get all the benefit of elevated dopamine and restoring baseline back to normal, which is a really cool thing. And it's there's a bunch of different ways of doing that. If you do heat, I think you've got to do heat until that dimorphin sort of really uncomfortable, panicky feeling where you want to get out of there comes. I think you do need that level of discomfort because then you're relieved from it. The cold, it just depends where you live around the world, but you can get there pretty quickly, and you don't need to do anything too expensive about it. And the relief from that is really palpable. And actually, the same is true about exercise. And so that sort of runner's high, and much of that is the reward system and some different physiology around the opioids and whatnot, working in the exact opposite way. So that's you make yourself sedentary and keep yourself insulated indoors, and you get the gaming and the social media and the junk food and the porn and the vaping and blah 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 modern life. Then good luck to you. So, but I think it's a relatively easily resolved situation with the right will. But that's sort of the point around PREKURE and behaviour change is
getting there,
getting people to get the will. Because if you go, that's the problem. That's the rule of law. If you tell someone to do something, they probably won't. If they tell you, they probably will. Which everyone knows that true with their partner. It's like, when was the last time giving advice worked out for you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That does. I totally appreciate that. Yeah. Grant, well, a couple of things actually spring to mind. Well, one is with regards to the cold and the heat, because obviously getting kids to exercise, maybe that's slightly easier, but should all parents just chuck their 14-year-old into some sort of cold plunge? Maybe that's how to do it. Is there a space for, because we never talk about kids actually and that sort of thermoregulation and
Danny does. He goes in the sauna and he goes in the cold plunge, and he chooses to do it to manage his physiology, which is had never expected that. I'd have to say, as a parent, one really good thing about saunas, I mean, sometimes you go in the sauna and then they're just like, oh, good dudes here, they just jump straight out. But often they do stay in there, and randomly they'll talk to you, which is quite an interesting proposition for a dad and a teenage boy.
Yeah, 100%.
Not many other places that happens, right?
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
And my other thing that actually you mentioned, the runner's high. Do you get a runner's high?
Yeah, I feel good after exercise. I to be honest, I think that you get a better one from swimming, to be honest.
Interesting.
Do you?
Well, yeah, because I often, I don't know what I expect from a runner's high. People talk about this, I want to get that runner's high, and so this is why they run. And I'm like, I never get a high from running. I have a lot of feel-good feelings. I look forward, I don't always look forward to the run, but, there are times, maybe 50% of the time I look forward to running. I love being out there doing it. Not all the time. Sometimes I really hate being out there doing it. But man, I love it when it's done. And I love the fact that I did it. And I literally feel like almost my work is done for the day, even if it's 6 a.m. in the morning and I've got an entire work day ahead of me. It's like I love it, but it is work. And I love the feeling that I've achieved it. But I think runner's high almost to me is people talk about this they're in the Zen place and
I think it's just the same feeling as not being cold anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So I think that's good enough. But we're not buzzing away on methamphetamine or something. That's not what happens with me.
Yeah. Okay. I was just interested to know what your experience is. So you're talking about the type of challenge and stimulus sort of comes in that sort of physical realm, like the thermoregulation, like exercise, diet. But of course, that's going to build that mental resilience. And like, what is there anything in that mental sort of resilience space which you've also looked in for this?
Yeah, so I think there's three things here I'll sort of talk about them in a couple of orders. One is sort of related to this, gaming and pleasure thing, but it's multitasking and distraction. That a lack of focus is just a thief of joy in life. And so if you want to have a crap life where you don't really achieve much, you're constantly jumping from place to place, then what you should do is you should have your phone in front of you, you should have your emails open, you should have people texting you, you should be using a messenger. You should just be multitasking, because that's the shortest route to not being able to pay attention to anything. There's a sort of myth of multitasking, and the myth is that women are substantially better than men, and we have some insight to the fact that we're good at this or not. And neither of those things are true. And I'll tell you why, because first of all, there isn't even a literature on multitasking. There's a literature on attention shifting, because that's what it is. You don't pay attention to concurrent but different inputs. You pay attention to one, then you move to another. And the thing is, when you do that, you come way back from where you left off. And the data on that are hugely robust. From things like, all you have to do is, there's studies when all you have to do is have your cell phone in the room with you, even in a bag, destroys cognitive performance more than not having it in the room at all. But having it up on your desk does worse. There's cell phones in driving behaviour, and the performance differences in a simulator with known hazards is profoundly different. Something like you'll only notice 8 out of 40 hazards when you've got your cell phone out. And not noticing a hazard means you didn't even know it was there. You've completely missed it. It was potentially pretty dangerous, but it goes into sort of cognitive work and everything we do. So if you want to bugger your life up, including your sleep, then multitask, because that'll be good fun for you. Anyone knows. I know if you're writing, you want to be productive, then you single task it. You're faster. You make less mistakes. Again, mistakes being defined as things you don't know you've made. So that's the first thing. The second thing is a really good piece of psychology. So remember, I did actually train as a psychologist. I wasn't very good because I don't shut up and listen enough. I've got the answers. I want to tell you.
You're very self-aware that you are.
Yeah. So that's something. But one thing that's the best tool that's developed in psychology over the last 15 years is this acceptance commitment therapy. And it really draws quite heavily on its roots in Japanese psychology, but also Stoicism, which I know is pretty popular, probably especially for your listeners. And the acceptance bit is that and this is sort of the exact opposite of cognitive behavior therapy, which is, you're going to have thoughts that are triggering. Here's how to avoid those thoughts. Don't drive past KFC because you might have a triggering thought, you might end up in there. And, that's a fair enough strategy. But acceptance commitment therapy is a better strategy. And it's one that's like, you're going to have negative thoughts and feelings. That's a normal part of human life. We're built to minimize danger. And so things are going to appear negatively sometimes. It's fine. The trouble is, if you try and wrestle with those thoughts or get rid of them or delete them, well, that's physically impossible. Like, deleting any thought is impossible. You can't. I say, Mikki, I don't want you to ever remember anything about the day of your wedding ever again. Just forget it. It's a great day. You're not going to forget it. Equally, you can't delete other thoughts. And it's, the classic, fusion example. It's like, don't think of a can of Coke, or don't think of a polar bear. All that pops into your mind is that. So if you can't delete a negative thought or feeling, then the best thing is to notice and acknowledge it. and that's called diffusing from it. So that's the acceptance part. And the commitment part is like, well, regardless of how you feel and what those things are, what are your values? What's your North Star? What's your best life? And so ultimately, it doesn't actually matter what you think. It matters what you do. And so in acceptance commitment therapy, we talk about the choice point, and the choice point talks about towards moves. I'm going to do something now that moves me towards my best life, or when I move, something takes me away from my best life. Now, I'll give you a real-life sports psychology example of this in action, because I'm really proud of this, because I'm otherwise skillless in the situation I'm describing. So this is a few years ago. I'm the soccer coach for the St. Joseph's Year 6 soccer team.
Wow.
Yeah, which I literally know nothing about it. We could have done a beat test, which we did do.
Hilarious.
Really. But what I've noticed in the games is that the ref, which is often the coach from the other team, would make calls that were both wrong and unfair, and the kids would get really pissed off about that. And then they would lose their shit a bit, and then the parents would lose their shit as well, and then the whole team would go to shit, and then we would just lose the game. And we were going to this tournament. This is the big quadrangular tournament of the North Shore, where we played Takapuna Primary, Forest Hill Primary, Milford Primary, and Hauraki Primary.
Yeah.
The stakes could not be higher.
Yeah.
So I had the boys there just as we were about to leave the school. I was like, one thing I've noticed that happens a lot in the games, guys, is the refs make calls that are wrong and bad. Sucks. But yeah. I was like, what do you reckon the chances of that happening in today's games are? And they're like, that's definitely going to happen. I was like, what, every game? Yep, multiple times. So they've identified that that's going to happen multiple times. And I was like, well, how are you going to feel about that? And they're like, we'll just carry on. I was like, no. Like you've been wrongly pulled out and penalised in a game that means something to you by some idiot that doesn't know what they're doing. How are you going to feel? Oh, yeah, I'll be pissed off. I'll be this and that. And they get chatting about it and talking it up. I was like, okay, well, we've identified that it's going to be inevitable that this is going to happen. We're going to feel upset about it, and we're not going to be able to do anything about either of those things. How are we hoping to go in the tournament? We're hoping we can, do as well as we can and, win most of the games and blah, blah, blah. So we work through the acceptance part. It's inevitable. We can't do anything about it. And we're going to feel shit. And I was like, well, what do you reckon the best thing to do? And then they are actually going, well, we'll probably just notice that thankfully some boys said, we're going to notice that we feel shit, but we'll probably just actually, the best thing to do is to get straight back in the game and do our best. And I was like, yeah. And we won the whole tournament, not because we're any good, but because the other teams all completely lost their shit. And we didn't. So all we had to do is not be useless and lose our shit. And the 12-year-olds won the game, and we victoriously carried the trophy back from Taharata Soccer Park to St. Joseph's School, a short walk, and paraded around the school. Amazing, but it's a small example, but it's such a great technique. I use it with the athletes I coach. A classic in endurance sport is that it is inevitable in the events that you choose, especially the 70.3 and Ironman that I coach, that you're going to feel physical and mental anguish, particularly physical anguish, particularly through your legs. And those feelings are unavoidable and inevitable. And so we recouch that as that's interesting data coming in from your body, and that they're going to carry on anyway, because that's what they'd already decided to do. So that's just another example of that. But acceptance commitment techniques are so easy to learn, and such a powerful way of thinking about what it takes to have a good life, because we can't not have negative thoughts and feelings. It's not a real thing. It's like it's part of being human. You can't avoid it, and yet we go out of our way all the time to try and avoid it, which is an exercise in stupidity.
As you were talking about your 70.3 athletes, I was thinking about the run that we just did, Grand to Grand, and I knew on the longest day, I knew because we were at the top of the field that we would start later. We would start at 10 a.m. as opposed to 8 a.m., which meant that we wouldn't be finishing this day at the earliest, maybe 2 o'clock, but maybe even 4 a.m. in the next morning.
Wow.
And as I was contemplating that in the sort of lead up to the event, I was like, in my head, I'm like, man, if only we can just be a bit slow enough so we don't get in that second wave. But that was actually never going to be an option. So, and once I realized this on day one, and the long stage was stage 3, I just thought there's nothing I can do about it. And actually it's going to hurt regardless, and we're going to have low points regardless. And in fact, part of those low points are a sign that we are this far through the event, that we have already achieved this much. And actually, and I literally have the thought in my head when we're doing it, every step, every kilometre is a kilometre closer to the end. And it actually helped me, it helped me sort of really get into it. And I actually really enjoyed the feeling of feeling like shit, I think, because it just meant I was closer to the end of the day. So I think what I've just described is exactly what you've just
You're 100% right, but I think there's a little bit more to it than you're giving yourself credit for, because I think, by the sounds of things, you've acknowledged that the low points are inevitable, and to rally against them happening or somehow think your way out of them is futile. So it's inevitable that they're coming. It's futile to try and will yourself out of them, and so you've ridden them through them, and as a normal process of life. Now, ultra endurance is great for that because it brings life into a sharp focus. So you get to do what people get in life, but it's given to you in a day. And this is one of the beautiful things about sport in general, and why I think it's so essential for young people, because it creates robustness through the rules. It forces discomfort. It forces situations where it's futile to get out of it. It's not possible, without literally taking a bat and ball and saying I'm going home, which is not an option when you're halfway across the desert.
Yeah, 100%.
So that's the beauty of sport and for adults. It just continue to, if you don't continue to keep reinforcing those lessons, and you've somehow won the lottery, and you just go to a life of hedonism and comfort on the beachfront property. Well, you'll have a miserable life, because
you actually do.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I have experienced that, but if I think about times where you might not be so, or I think about people who literally on the outside wouldn't have anything to stress about, your mind will still create problems, and in part there'll be problems that will be unsolvable because they're almost not real to begin with. I don't know if that. I'm just thinking about people
the road that when we don't get our bin in, she gets really upset, because that's all she's got to worry about. I should say the other thing, though, what you've got to be careful about is being a hyper choose your hard responder, because there's a flip side to just choosing hard stuff all the time, because eventually you're sort of subjugated into a life where you're depositing into this bank that you never withdraw from, right? And we know lots of people who train and live their life like that. So there's we're choosing some of the hard stuff now because otherwise someone else will choose the hard stuff for us, and we didn't want that path. We wanted this path. So we're just more choosing a path. And I mean, this is what I see in education, right? So I didn't really try at school. Well, that's just a dumbass decision, because not doing the hard work there means that every life is going to be hard. The area under the hardness curve is about the same, but if you get to choose it early, then your trajectory is way up here, and you get all this other rewards and resources that go with it. If you don't try early, someone else will decide what your heart is, and all of a sudden you're working in a factory and 2 jobs and living in places you don't want to live, and then your whole life unfolds with the same hardness, but not what you chose. And so that's what it's about. It's choosing. There's a hardness to choose. You choose, because if you don't, someone else will feel that'll suck. It's not about the sort of moral and Christian virtue of temperance, which is put off feeling good about yourself until you die, which is of course fundamentally stupid, because the very point where you cease to exist, therefore can't feel anything, that's what you're waiting for. That's like I know other people might have other things they believe about life and death and stuff, but at the moment, that's where the evidence seems to me. Like, temperance sucks. Like, it's sort of. I'm going through purgatory now for my whole life to avoid eternal purgatory. Jeez.
That may or may not actually exist. Yeah. It's when you put it like that, it's definitely more than questionable. Grant, what I think about a lot with clients that I work with, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. So I talk a lot to them about that emotional regulation, and sometimes when you're in the moment, like when your soccer team is on the field, the ref has just made the bad call and they're getting angry, it really does take discipline to sort of not get emotionally hijacked by that. That's where I think people can struggle. Like, they know logically what they should do, but their logical brain just will not kick in. And so if they, get angry or they're stressed, their emotional brain is telling them to eat the chocolate, to drink the wine, to watch the porn, to do the thing which allows them to be distracted from real life. Like, are there in what you sort of, maybe not necessarily with the soccer example, but just in other people that you talk to in this sort of behaviour change space, like, are there tactics that help people, I guess, reground themselves or come back to the present and not sort of run away with their emotions? Which is because ultimately, when you look back retrospectively in any situation, you almost know what the thing was that you should have done, and it's the thing that you would have wanted to have been doing, but you just get emotionally hijacked.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a few aspects of that. We've just written a couple of behaviour change books as well. And I think one thing, a point I make in behaviour change is it's all good and well doing lots of psychology, which we've been doing a bit of just now, but also don't forget biology. Like, sometimes people think, like I said this a lot in eating, and you will as well. So people have an emotional eating behaviour. They have a bunch of stuff going on. It's not until they actually change the composition of their diet and get off the ultra processed food, and so they have not riding that roller coaster. I mean, my estimate on the sugar crash phenomenon of hypoglycemia because you eat starchy and sugary food, reactive hypoglycemia, the sugar crash because you overcompensate with insulin. My view is that emotional day rules about 50% of New Zealanders and Australians, and probably therefore everyone else in the Western world. So it's all good and well going on an emotional eating problem, or then it turns into a full-blown eating addiction or even a mild addiction. It's very easy to think of those things as a dysregulation, and it is a dysregulation, but it's a dysregulated normal physiology. So I want to just put that in advance. Yeah,
so we wouldn't expect anything else, given.
No, of course, and we're all predisposed in different ways, right? So I tried cigarettes when I was younger, and I didn't get addicted to them. I don't know what I was thinking. But
so did I, actually.
But we didn't, because we're not that way inclined. And I probably could drink a fair bit of booze. Not that I actually drink at the moment, but if I did, I don't reckon I'd become an alcoholic.
Yes.
I'm not quite wired that way, and I'm not easily addicted to food in the same way either. But other people are just wired a bit differently. And in a different world, that would be an advantage to them, but not so much. So not all of us react the same way. And if you're more reactive that way, then that's a thing. The second thing about biology with that is also the nervous system's completely under normal voluntary control. I won't talk about the autonomic nervous system, but in reality, how you breathe dictates how your nervous system responds. If you close your mouth and breathe in slowly through your nose, hold the breath vaguely at the top and breathe out again and hold it at the bottom, that sort of box-shaped breathing, then your sympathetic nervous system, the whole fight or flight response is utterly squashed. There's a thing called the baroreflex. You cannot physically have that negativity bias, better safe than sorry, fight or flight system activated if you're breathing like that. And many people's grandmothers, at least when I had grandmothers, they would say, look, before you say anything, take 3 deep breaths. But literally both my grandmothers said that to me. And I suppose they were talking about emotional regulation through the baroreflex and the sympathetic nervous system control. None of those words they'd ever heard of. Well, maybe they had, but probably not. And these are normal things. So I think part of behaviour change is also being a decent physiologist, because while we talk about these acceptance commitment techniques and noticing negative thoughts and all that sort of stuff, if you've got dysregulated reward systems and your normal homeostasis around glucose and insulin is all up the creek, and you're a chronic mouth breather, and you're not going to have the biology that supports making good decisions. And I think that's not really talked about in the world. I don't know why, but I've been thinking that way.
Yeah. And you know what, Grant, when I'm listening to you talk about it and talk about changes, I talk about the environment we live in and the exercise we're not doing and the we're not breathing properly, all of this stuff. I understand why some people who have yet to make a move feel a little bit, get that paralysis by analysis. In part, because and you must have this as well, get a lot of interaction with people. And sometimes, I will be honest, sometimes I feel like people make an excuse for themselves. They're like I'm so overwhelmed with all this information, I don't know where to start, so I don't do anything. And I do think in some people that actually is just an excuse. I think it's a deflection tactic. I mean, I don't know how this sounds, but that's actually what I think. And so they just so it gives them yet another day to live the life that they're in their little comfort zone. But I do think truly people might feel stuck in the situation they're in, and they've got all of these opportunities sort of might be presented to them, but they're not sure which one is going to be the biggest dial mover and which one might be the easiest for them, because someone might look at you and go, it's all right for you, Prof. Grant Schofield, because look at where you are, because people think things like that.
It's true though. We have, part of the human condition is we've basically mastered our environment. When we didn't master our environment, and when times when we actually don't, like when there's hardship and wars and stuff, mental ill health drops off the face of the earth. There's really not much of a thing. Crime drops way down. National pride and unification. I'm not suggesting we start a war, by the way. There's massive unpleasant things about that. But when we're not fully in control of our own environment, back in our Paleolithic times, we've got too many other things to actually worry about than being able to sink into comfort. I'm not saying that those lives were almost much fun, because we were probably almost never satisfied. We were constantly in search of doing the next thing. Winter's coming, find some food, we're going to starve, we're going to get food in 2 days. So you've got all of those things. Now we've mastered those, and that's fabulous. We don't have to worry about those, and that's an amazing thing. But it's come at such a cost of the sort of comfort crisis that we live in. And the reality is, and why I've had to write this book why I've had to do it is simply because we have to take affirmative action to choose hard things in our lives. Otherwise, we can't have a good life. And that's the paradox of modern living. You have to choose hard things, otherwise your life's going to suck, which is sort of counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive. The whole medical industry and how we talk about health is certainly counter to the entire psychology and psychiatry industry and how we talk about mental health. It's certainly contrary to the whole consumer world and Instagram and buying stuff that we live in. It's counter to the entire ultra-processed food world that we live in. We've sold in the lotto world and in the holiday world. We've sold a mirage that our life will be awesome if we became creatures of leisure. And the ultimate lie in that for all humans is retirement. It's a stupid idea. You should work hard in sort of purgatory, and then when you're old enough, you can just have the reward of not working and just floating around doing whatever you want. How dumb is that?
I can see though why people feel like this is that is their reward for working hard, But I am on the same page with you, like in that, because I mean, a sense of purpose is one of the. To your point, you talk about it. Actually, in fact, another podcast I did earlier today, a similar conversation. Like when you have this sort of sense of purpose, it's actually the driving force behind like a really good life.
Yeah, well, you have to have a sense of. Actually, on that, I should let me just try and find this and read this out. I'll go to my last truth: know your why, or you'll have nowhere to go. And what I did is I tried to unpack what I called, this is getting quite metaphysical, to be honest, Mikki, but yeah, we'll just see what you're think about. Understand life's essential truth. So I went and read all these brilliant things, like the Stoic stuff, the Tao Te Chi, which is the Taoism literature that read about Buddhism and Zen and and then more modern sort of contemporary Arthur C. Brooks, who's sort of well-being psychologist, and these things, and I came. My view was that we're not the first humans to ever be thinking about what it takes to have a good life. We're millennia into being humans, and there's no reason they were more stupid than us 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, or in different cultures. And in fact, these things should converge from different religions and different sort of self-help, modern self-help, and everything. So I think they do, and I've got. I've called these, with tongue-in-cheek, essential truths. And I've got 4 essential truths, okay? So here's the essential truths. Essential truth 1, mortality. We are all going to die.
All but one. All but one. Who's the one person that will not die?
What's that about?
Brian Johnson.
Yeah. I honestly find that stuff a bit ridiculous, to be honest.
So do I. Who wants to live forever? Honestly.
It's weird.
It is weird. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and he's just randomly trying non-evidence-based stuff. Like I said, today he's going to be microdosing psilocybin for longevity because there's one mouse study with telomere length. It's like, really? Yeah. But I think there's a really important idea that that you're actually going to die. And I think we've talked about this with our parents, and I think Barry's dad, my dad, and them passing away. The only way you can live a good life is to acknowledge that life is finite, and that it comes to an end. And that is a strong theme throughout history. And I really feel sad, anyways, for the end of my dad's life with prostate cancer. He was so worried about every conceivable treatment, he forgot, and so scared of dying, even though he got to his mid-80s with a pretty good quality of life, that he forgot to learn to know how to live. And I think that was a real shame. So that's essential truth number 1. You're going to really like essential truth number 2.
Yeah, I liked essential truth number 1, just so you know.
Essential truth number 2, less is more. And that's a theme that comes across all the time. But accumulating stuff is no path to happiness and well-being. It's just not the way. Actually, the less stuff you have, the less things that you actually do, the more you achieve. So I think that's the next one. Essential truth number 3, your life will change. I really like this one, and I got this more from, it's that, one of the things that's known in modern psychology is that your fluid intelligence, your ability to be an academic ninja and absolutely, nail it, peaks when you're about 35 years of age. And it actually consistently and reasonably rapidly goes downhill from there on in. You go, well, that's shit. I'm super smart at 36 or 35, but then it goes down after that.
Because how old are you?
I'm 58. So what do you about there? Oh, my God. But the good news is that a thing called crystallized intelligence, so long as you keep doing this massively improves. Now, crystallized intelligence is really what we call wisdom. And it's really why, as you get older, things like mentoring and helping other people, coaching, those types of things are so much more important, because you do accumulate wisdom if you do it the right way and actively go about it. So your life will change. You won't be the ninja, and athletic performance is another thing. I mean, somehow you've still managed to maintain it reasonably well, Mikki. I've sort of fallen off the cliff, frankly, even though I've tried hard. I'm still okay, but I'm not anything like I was. So your life will change, and I think the seasons of life, are really a thing. And essential truth number 4: loss and pain are inevitable and necessary. There's nothing truer in life about, and this has been a real feature across all of religion, and to be fair, they had more loss and pain possibly in older times than we have now, but these are not things to be shied away from when they happen. Most people who have started a business and lost it, or most people in athletic environments would say that almost all learning that they've had came through the failures, not through the successes. And that's true in business. I know that's true in business. I know that's true in sport,
in music, in entrepreneur, like you hear it all of the time. People say that you weren't there to get the 48 rejection letters before I finally got that one acceptance letter for my New York Times bestseller, for example.
100%. So, in fact, the only path to a good life is going to be through, multiple failures, because failure is such a powerful teacher. Success is a weak teacher.
Do you know, Grant, the thing, I feel like these are things which people should know or do know, but don't act on or refuse to acknowledge or something like that, because I have a lot of people in my ecosystem and I talk about this and like this quite a lot, but it's almost like there's a block in their willingness to accept, the people with the all or nothing type personalities, the type A perfectionists. Like, we know so many of these people, and that mindset might get them so far in other areas of their life. But if I'm just thinking about health, it's like one of the number one sort of killers of any success, if you like, because as soon as they hit a barrier and they cannot overcome it, it's the end of it. I wonder why people just don't get this message.
I mean, I know I've got a doctor of philosophy sitting in the background there, so I like to, not that it's actually in philosophy, it's in psychology, but I like to think that philosophy is actually something to engage in life, and think about. We're not going to solve how the universe works and the meaning of life. As Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the answer is 42. So there's absurdity there at some point. But regardless of not knowing the bigger picture stuff, I think you've got to come to life with something about life. And in many ways, that's the beauty of religion, is it offers people a structure to understand. Now, it has its good points and bad points, but to offer that structure. Now, because we're a secular society, we don't have that guidance anymore, and that's in many ways a good thing as well. Then I do think it's important to have some philosophy of life and some parameters around which you do things. And I'm not this come out wrong. I'm not trying to offer up Choose Your Heart as a religious text or a philosophy book, but I'm just going, for me at least, the reason I wrote it brings some value around what the sort of things I'm interested in, which are biological, physiological realities, psychology, practicing psychology, changing your behaviour, understanding how to fit into a mismatched world, and as well as some philosophy and religion. I wrote it for me, just to get some clarity around that. So that's been a success already. If it helps someone else, then so be it.
And I feel like, Grant, you almost cut through a lot of that esoteric sort of stuff that is out there that people could dive into themselves. Like you mentioned stoicism and all the rest of it. Like for some people, that's just a little bit too abstract. But if they can have practical application of some of those principles, then you get an understanding of those principles alongside doing it. And I feel like a book like yours would offer that up to people.
It's interesting because the stoicism is such a great example, because I listen to that Tim Ferriss and those, the other guy with the daily
Stoicism. Yeah. Ryan Holiday, is it?
Ryan Holiday. It's good stuff. And Ryan Holiday is probably just a better example, but it's not the only tool. Like there's multiple tools here, right? So stoicism is like a really good screwdriver, and acceptance commitment therapy might be like a really good saw. And like you to take the building analogy further, you really need to have a time and place to use the different tools. And there's not one tool. There's heaps of tools, and you're not going to build a house just with a screwdriver or a hammer. That wouldn't be a great house. And so I think that's what I like to do anyway. Think about that stuff.
Yeah, nice one, Grant. And then with regards to yourself, like what do you practice on maybe not daily, but maybe a weekly or frequent basis as part of our discussion today from your sort of like choose your hard? What's your hard?
Yeah, so that's my part 3. I actually went through that and said, here's the things that I do. And I've just to be clear, I failed at all of them. But my annual hardest thing is my July the 1st 5-day fast. And I start that every year, and I just have low confidence that I'll somehow not make it. And people go, you lose muscle mass on it. Okay, maybe. But
it's 5 days out of 365. I mean, I think you're all right.
And trust me, I have other days where I've made up for some of that. So that's a set annual thing. Our family owns a sauna, which we had to save for. Like, I literally saved $40 a week for ages to get that, and invested well. Got a chest freezer, so we've got those. Obviously, I'm an exercise sort of guy because that's both my job and my life, and that's part of my thing. So, I've recently started choosing hard events again. I just did a 70.3 triathlon for the first time in 15 years, and I'm doing the Ironman triathlon in March. Yeah, which I know people will, guffaw at because it is pretty extreme. But in fact, that's the hard thing that I've chosen, and it's. I'd rather choose that than learning to play the guitar or something. It's where my community is. I know the sport. I coach in the sport. I like the details. I like the equipment. I like everything about it, pretty much, except for the entry fees. And so that's another hard. I think you've got to. I think everyone should choose some hard around food rules. Like if you don't have some rules, and you've got to believe the rules. Now, I think we're quite aligned on this, Mikki, from what I actually practice. So I started as a low carb and sort of keto fasting author. I do stick to a low carb base if I'm just preparing my own food, but I accidentally come across carbohydrates as part of my day-to-day life, which I don't necessarily avoid. Sometimes I do, but sometimes I don't, and particularly around some of my exercise. I use it, but I do have some rules. And I avoid alcohol as a rule. So, I think without food rules, and you can be a low-fat person, you can be just wickedly prioritise protein person, but those, just to be clear, those are still rules around food. And I
was just going to say, I think that rules provide the structure that these provide gives you a bit of freedom, actually. So you're not always making decisions, and because I think people get that real fatigue around having to make a decision. Are they going to have that drink? Are they going to, so are you going to order pasta? I don't know. I'm just throwing these things out here, but essentially, if you have a way of doing things, then suddenly you've got these guardrails, and that almost like takes care of like 80% of those food decisions, which just alleviates a lot of that.
So
mental
that must drive you crazy, because you do way more of this than me, but it drives me crazy when people want an eating plan, which I'm against for a start, but also they want 10 different options for these different types of meals. And I actually personally think they'd be better off with way less options. Here's the rules. Stick to these, you're free.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because oftentimes with people, like, I'm happy to provide people with plenty of options, for the most part, because it's part of what I do is design these options for people. But I think people think that they want options, like they think they want to count macros, but then when they have the reality of all of this different choice, it is just too complicated for them. And actually, just do these 3 things on rotation across your week, you are good.
But I mean, a classic example of a great rule that's really strict is your protein sparing modified fast, right? Like it's really strong, right? Because it's like, here's what you're doing on these days, and here's your choices: do it 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. These are the results you get. You choose. So first of all, you haven't told them to do it; they've chosen the one they want, which is behaviour change. Second, you go, here's what you do on that day. And so, like, they're not, and that, it's almost like that's really restrictive on one hand, but on the other hand, it's actually really freeing. And I really like that method. In fact, I'm just about to do that method in the second part of November, because I'm not overweight or anything, but I'm just going to drop like 3 kilos
Nice.
for my race, because I don't know, I've got some goals that I want to achieve. I don't, it's not a health thing. It's a performance thing. But I'm going to do it through a protein sped modified fast. I start 1 day a week and see how that goes. If that's not going so well, I'm going to add to 2 days. And if I have to go up to 3, I will. I probably, hopefully won't.
I'd be very surprised if you did, actually. Like, I think that you would get away with 1 or maybe even 3 a fortnight, depending on how long you wanted to sort of do it.
Right.
Yeah, I think that would be such an effective strategy.
Yeah, but like it's a freeing strategy, because that's the rule that day.
Yeah, 100%. And there are just most personalities, even if they don't realize it until they do it, actually just really well suited. You don't even have to think about it. And from a preparation perspective, at least a lot of people I speak to are like, I don't even have to worry about thinking about what vegetables to have for dinner. And they're like, thank God, so simple. And it's only 1 day. It's just 1 day. You can do anything for 1 day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so, nice one, Grant.
I really like that rules thing. Other hard stuff. I mean, the thing I most struggle with in my whole life, this is going to sound ridiculously stupid, is getting the phone and iPad out of my bedroom. They just need to go. As soon as I put them elsewhere, I have a proper night's sleep. They sit there, and if I don't look at them, I wake up and talk myself into them awake. I might as well listen to a podcast. It's just all bullshit, and it ruins my life. And somehow I'm in a struggle that I never quite solve. I get them out, and then it's like they've got a mind of their own. They come back into my room, and my sleep's buggered again. And I'm not a big Instagrammer or X or any of those things, but I do like to look at them. It's quite good fun, and it's quite good fun to see what the algorithm serves you up and what you get locked into. I mean, honestly, for some random reason, it's been serving me up people. I don't know if you get this, but it's people like who've got overgrown yards, and they come in with the snippers and clean them all up.
I don't get that in my feed. I wonder if Barry does. Barry might. I don't.
But I've obviously paid enough attention to it and thought it was exciting enough that it keeps giving you more, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. Isn't that interesting, Grant? Just everyone has a thing that isn't like that you can sort of get on top of, but sometimes it slips, and then you
I
get
know
back
better.
on top of it.
Of
course you do.
I know better, and it's just I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I wonder what my thing is, actually. There will be one. Maybe. It's interesting. So in the last year, we've had several trips overseas, much more than we would have liked probably last year.
Yeah.
And it's very easy for us to get into a habit of just having a beer. Just having just 1, maybe 2. And so what I was noticing is that my alcohol consumption, I did a whole podcast on this actually, was sort of bleeding into maybe 5 days of the week.
Oh, yeah, that's getting to be an issue. Yeah.
Yes. And so I decided to, when we got back in May, that I was just going to drink 3 days a week. Just 3. And like when I drink, I don't go to, like I have a very good off switch. I prefer the pre-dinner drink as opposed to an after-dinner drink. Like
that's a
I
good
do
thing.
have a lot of things
when
in
you
my
have dinner, you
favour.
don't feel like drinking anymore. That's a good sign.
It is a good sign. So, but what I noticed the first month, it actually was really hard to dial it in and to actually just do 3 days a week. And what I realized was I really had to exert quite a lot of discipline to do that.
Yeah.
But then after a period of time, and maybe it was 3 to 4 weeks, it just started, not only was it normalized, but I just started looking forward to not drinking for 4 or even 5 days of the week and actually feeling like really good about it and feeling really good for it. Of course, subsequently in the last month, I've been away more than I've been at home. And so getting back into that, I was just reflecting on this yesterday here in Dunedin, thinking, man, I have to really exert quite a lot of discipline to walk past that wine tasting at New World, because I would love to go and taste that wine. But I've told myself this is an alcohol-free day, so I'm not going to break my own rule. So it's not like, I mean, is that a drinking problem? I don't think it's a drinking problem, but
it's
I have a problem.
Habit issue. Because we were just, Louise and I were wandering around the South Bank area, and then we're like, oh, that looks like Mikki and Karen. And then they are at the pub, and they're like, oh no, we've got these cards. You just go up with the card and get your own beers and beer tasting.
Your own.
And they've got like 6 or 7 beers in front of them. I'm like, what's going on?
It's bloody fun. And this is the thing, Grant, right? Because I legitimately look at it as a bit of a hobby. Like, it's a hobby to go to a brewery. It's something I enjoy doing, trying the different beers and things like that. So when I am on holiday, then I'm okay. Like, I don't have this like real strict, like, feel bad if I have nothing like that. So I'm actually also pretty pleased with my mindset around it.
Well, to be fair though, when we were lost on that run, it was like 6 a.m. around the back of Brisbane. So you're like, oh, that looks like a pretty good pub.
Yeah, I see. It's my hobby. I'm always on the lookout. Well, that looks like I could go there.
I'm not really thinking about a pub at this hour of the morning.
No, and so I appreciate what you say with the struggle with you've got one thing that it's just a bit more of a mental discipline type thing, and right now in where I'm at, like, mine would probably be to get back into those 3 days. So I'm proud of myself because I did have a ginger beer last night and I've got a Pepsi Max for tonight. So
nice.
And I legitimately am quite chuffed with myself. And I think that is a feeling which I really need to lean into. And equally, I really enjoy delayed gratification. I mean, I really do. It's just my personality type. Knowing that I'll get a beer on Saturday.
You're quite good on moderation. Like, I'm not very good on moderation. I'd rather have this year I said I'm just not drinking because I drank too much last year. And it's just been easier to do it that way. Like, because I don't have to make any decisions. There's like no decision to be made. Everyone knows about it. No one's hassling me. Yeah, I'm not at a stage in my life where I'm going to get hassled anyway, but still.
Nah. So, no, I agree with you with that. Not that on your moderation, but that, most people are pretty accepting. Yeah. Hey, Grant, we're going to have to wrap this up because I want to be mindful of your time. So I'm excited for your book. Let the listeners know when it is, when you think it's going to come out, because I know it can't be too far away. And then also just where they can find you and everything to do with PREKURE and behaviour change, your podcast, etc.
Yeah, so you can come to profgrantschofield.com and sign up to my newsletter. I won't hassle you. It's not I'm trying to sell you anything there, but when the book comes out, which is towards the end of 2025, so in a month or two, then I'll let you know there. It's going to be on Kindle and print on demand there initially. There's also links through to the Prevention is Cure podcast, which I recommend. It also links through to PREKURE.com if you're interested in behaviour change stuff. We've actually written, I've just been actually going this year on the book writing stuff. Like, we've actually written 3 behaviour change books, a foundations, an advanced and a clinical practice one. I've just actually been my whole year just going on that, and I've been learning quite a lot actually. It's been cool. So that's all coming up as well.
Are they available to the public, to people who
They will be available to the public in the next month or so.
Nice one. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on those because they're just the more you can learn about behaviour change, just the better you can serve the people that you're trying to help, right?
Yeah, and it also works on you. This exact same techniques work on yourself.
Yeah.
This is the beautiful thing about it. So that's why that's why I was just going, the holy grail of having a good life is knowing how to change yours and others' behaviour. It's like as simple as that. Like if information was enough, then humans would be better off, but it's not.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And thanks for having me, Mikki. It's been cool. I just really value our friendship and collegiality, and it's like, so it seems like it's been my whole life.
It's been half of mine. No, I'm not quite that young, but yes, it's been some time. Grant, ditto, and hilariously, I sent you through those amazing questions, which I looked at maybe twice, but I think
we covered most of them, and actually you got those off your community. In your community, I was going to say, know me better than I know me, which is cool.
It is really cool. I agree. All right, Grant, you have a great evening, won't you?
All right, catch you.
Alrighty, hopefully you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed chatting to Grant. It really is like just a conversation between two friends. And in fact, this is a conversation that Grant and I would have regardless of whether anyone else was listening. As I said, I've included links as to where you can find Grant in the show notes. And next week on the podcast, I'm going to be speaking to Dr. Abby Smith-Ryan about metabolism, metabolic health, and women. Super great conversation. Until then, though, you can catch me over on Instagram, Threads, and X at Mikki Williden, Facebook at Mikki Williden Nutrition, or head to my website, mikkiwilliden.com, and sign up to my Mondays Matter Christmas edition, which kicks off Monday, 10th of November. Registrations close Sunday, 9th of November. All right, team, you have the best week. See you later.